Hello and welcome back to the Pitchside Podcast. I'm your host, the HOD of the PSP. Like, share, comment on the YouTube version, subscribe to the YouTube channel, enable notifications to receive all the updates, and follow us on social media, of course, and listen to the podcast on Spotify, Google Podcasts, or any other platform. Thanks for the support, and let's get into it. We kick things off from La Ceramica, and of course it was Villareal hosting Juventus in the round of 16, the continuous action of the round of 16 of the Champions League. And let's kick off talking about this game straight from the start. Obviously the start was pretty electric, 32 seconds on the clock. Dusan Vlahovic doesn't need more than a minute to prove himself in the Champions League that he is a player ready for the big nights of the Champions League. He scores the first goal for Juventus, his first goal on his debut in the Champions League, making it a perfect debut for him. For Juventus, a goal in the league on his debut, a goal in the cup on his debut, and a goal in the Champions League on his debut. The quickest goal for Juventus in the Champions League since Del Piero's, I think, in 2006-07 season against Manchester United, if I'm correct. And this was a scenario that I think fell perfectly into Massimiliano Allegri's lap, because I'm assuming the scenario was for most of the game probably Juventus trying to defend and hit on the counter. And because they didn't have Dybala coming in, of course, they didn't have Chiesa, of course, long-term injury still on. Chiellini was out. Alexandro was not 100% fit, but he still started as a third centre-half, not as a fourth defender, not as a full-back, started as a third centre-half. And Chilio started on the left as a sort of a wing-back. Cuadrado, there was a wing-back. It was almost a 3-4-3 with Rabiot as an extra man up front with a third attacker, but in reality it was Dusan Vlahovic and Morata pretty much the sole strikers in that occasion, with Rabiot as a third midfielder. Him and McKennie, I think, had a decent game as far as Juventus are concerned, but obviously when you score a goal as early as that, the scenario will be automatically, if you're Allegri and if you're Juventus, to sit back and try and absorb Villareal's pressure and hit on the counter, which what they went to do. And to be fair, to give them all the credit in the world, they absorbed Villareal's pressure really well in the first half at the very least. They didn't give them loads of spaces. They didn't create chances themselves, but they didn't give Villareal loads of spaces to create chances on their own. Villareal, I thought, tried to rely heavily on trying to stretch the game on the flanks. And considering that Juventus were basically playing with 5 in the middle, with Morata dropping back as well, making it 6, and Vlahovic playing behind the centre circle. So basically, all of Juventus were behind the centre circle, and all of Juventus were defending like in blocks. It was few and far in between the opportunities where Villareal tried to get spaces. Like there was only one notable chance where really Juventus got outstretched when De Ligt went out of position, left spaces behind him and behind Danilo. That's where Villareal played their most dangerous couple of good situations and balls in the first half. In the second half, it was more of the same and was more intense from Villareal as far as attacking is concerned. They found more spaces, they started super strong, and by that moment in the second half, really it was a matter of time before Juventus, capitulate and concede the equaliser, and that's what happened in the worst way possible in the 65th minute. Obviously credit to Villareal because they played it really, really smart. They were much intense in the second half. They pressed higher, they forced Juventus to make mistakes in the midfield, which they usually do, and with no players like Kulusevski to hold the play for them in the middle, and Bentancur, and starting with Locatelli, who's not defensive, so it's not exactly his profile. No McKennie, Rabiot was not defensively was not good, although attacking he gave a little bit of a support. So the first time they played a proper ball in that space behind Locatelli in the midfield, between Locatelli and the centre-backs, the first proper ball they played between those lines was Etienne Capoe's brilliant pass to Dani Parejo for the equaliser. And obviously you have to judge the positioning of the trio at the back. Obviously Bonucci came on in the second half for Alexandro, and you have to judge their positioning. I mean, these are three, at least except Danilo probably, the two others are world-class defenders, if we can call them that. You judge their positioning. De Ligt, Danilo and Bonucci always standing next to each other and leaving like acres of space for Dani Parejo to run in and score the goal. Took his time, tucked it in, 1-1 Villareal. And the game almost evolved into Juventus trying to basically hold the ball in any way. Playing long balls forward didn't work. Vlahovic only had one other shot on target aside from the goal really for the whole game. Didn't really get loads of situations where he was free of any marking. Although he made it tough for Raul Albiol and Pau Torres throughout the game. Physically, he's really good. He tried to challenge. He tracks back. He fights for the ball. But definitely not having support and creativity behind him really hurt. McKennie going down injured and replaced by Zakaria didn't help as well. Add to that, Pellegrini coming in for De Chilio. It felt like the bench for Allegri was not exactly having the attacking options that he wanted to. Moiskin was an option, but he didn't use him. So it is really, really interesting to see how Juventus is going to be approaching the second game. Of course, there's no away goal. There's no advantage from this draw that they got at La Ceramica. So any 0-0 draw, 1-1 draw, any kind of result will really see them, go to penalties and go to extra time. And I don't think they're going to go to that sort of level of hardship to get through the quarterfinals. Villareal, if they won, we will say that they were the more deserving side of the win. They deserved at the very least a draw, but for Juventus I think it was the best result that could dream of, a draw. And of course with the fact that McKennie went down injured, and this could be a very, very big blow come the second leg, with the long-term absentees that they have, it's going to be hard and tough in mid-March to try and catch up to Villareal, who I think played better, and they deserved that draw. And in the second leg, I think, I'm not going to say they enter as a favourites, but I think if they play the same game, and Juventus play the same game in particular, this is going to be bigger of a chance to Villareal to qualify to the next round of the quarter-finals. Juventus got what they wanted, I suppose, out of this game, not losing, but obviously, as I mentioned, the best result they could get, considering the circumstances of the game and scenario of the game, was a draw. They didn't do much, they didn't create much, and, they got a result that is flattering, to be fair, considering the circumstances of the game. In the second game of Tuesday's action, of course, on the Champions League, it was Chelsea hosting Lille. And I mentioned it in the preview video, of course, for this game, that this is a side that is not the same side as last season. I mean, both teams are not the same side of last season, to be fair. But obviously, for Lille, it's much worse since they were the champions in France, and they shocked the world by knocking PSG off their throne last season, and they sort of dwindled into the obscurity this season, losing their manager, of course, losing a bunch of players, and probably they will lose a bunch more players in this summer transfer window, probably. Renato Sanchez is a big target, Sven Botman is a big target, and Jonathan Bamba, I guess, as well as David up front. Both strikers are really going to be big, big targets for the summer. So it is a pretty hard situation for Lille at the moment, and for the players. They go against Chelsea, a side that is, I'm not going to say living in crisis, but not exactly in the best of moods at the moment. Yes, they're getting wins, but those wins are really, really hard, and the attacking department is not exactly functioning as well as you like. Lukaku didn't start the game, they started different, they reverted back to Havertz up front with Ziyech and Pulisic around him. Kovacic came in for Jorginho with Conte in the middle. Alonso and Azpilicueta as the wing backs, of course, and Silva, Christensen, and Rudiger were the trio at the back. And frankly, this was not the best game for Chelsea ever. This was not the best game for the season ever. Lille were, I'm not going to say more dangerous, but created better opportunities and more opportunities, than Chelsea. They dominated the ball. They had a decent game, to be fair. Yes, they were stunned early by Havertz's goal in the 8th minute. It was a good start from Chelsea, but after that, Chelsea regressed in a way, and they tried to defend really deep, inviting all sorts of pressure from Lille, shooting from outside the box, which is something that Chelsea didn't do for the whole game. Lille trying to find spaces behind Alonso in particular, and behind Azpilicueta. Jonathan Bamba, I thought, had a great game against Azpilicueta. Of course, we all know Azpilicueta is not exactly the paciest of wing-backs. Probably if Reece James was there, it would have been a different game. For Alonso, it was the same as well on that side with Andre. Definitely, if Chilwell was there, he would defend better than Alonso, I would suppose. So I think overall, I didn't watch the full game, but I watched, an extended version of the highlights, and I'm really thinking that this wasn't the best of games for Chelsea. They get the 2-0 results, they will take it, obviously, and that will put them in a good position to qualify for the quarterfinals. I don't think Lille have enough to come anywhere close to turning around things in the second leg. It's almost impossible to think so. Like the English teams, so far, obviously with one of them still to play on Thursday, are really good at the moment. Chelsea doing well, Liverpool doing well, City settling the deal in the first leg, but obviously with different levels of performances. Chelsea, again, were not the best of themselves, but they really capitalised on the pace of their attackers, the pace of Ziyech, the pace of Pulisic, the pace of Havertz really up front, and of course the runners from Conte, and indeed it was the run from Conte who helped them to score the second goal thanks to Christian Pulisic in the second half. I mean, if the result remained 1-0, it would have been dangerous for Chelsea for the second leg even, but with 2-0, it is, I'm not going to say not even close, but it keeps them in a pole position, and it really deflates Lille, who again had a decent game. They had a good game plan. They didn't exactly allow loads of spaces for Chelsea. I mean, the first goal was a set piece, so they weren't exactly defending bad. It was just the fact that on a couple of good details, Chelsea capitalised on them. I thought there was sort of a copy-paste of the Real Madrid game from last season, obviously with difference in the opponents and the calibre of the opponents, but it was pretty much the same. It was capitalising on the spaces, trying to outstretch the defence with the counter-attacks and the quickness, and that was that. Chelsea took advantage and scored a couple of good goals, a couple of important goals, taking the result 2-0 to France. Before, of course, the rest of the challenges. They have a big game coming in the weekend, obviously in the Carabao Cup final against Liverpool, and certainly they still, I'm not going to say still fighting for the title, but I think preserving their third place on the table would be pretty nice to end the season on. They're still in the Champions League as well, so and in the FA Cup, so they still have a couple of good competitions to play for the season. This game is done and dusted, pretty much. But again, not the best of performances, but they got what they should get from this game, which is a win, of course, against Lille, who had a decent game, but unfortunately their adventure in the Champions League looks like it will be stopping in the round of 16. We move on to Wednesday's action in the Champions League, and of course it was Atletico Madrid hosting Manchester United at the Wanda Metropolitano. Cristiano Ronaldo's return to Madrid as a player. The last time he was there, of course, was with Real Madrid in 2018. Not in that stadium in particular, but obviously he was, playing a part of Real Madrid. And this game was, right off the bat, the weird game selection or team selection from Ralf Rangnick in particular for Manchester United really blew my mind in this one. I mean, Wan-Bissaka was fine, he was not injured. He didn't start as a right back. Lindelof started as a right back, which immediately was a red flag, I suppose, from Ralf Rangnick. It was clearly something that he didn't want to do, but clearly needed to do, because he saw Diogo Dalla being offensively good but defensively bad, Wan-Bissaka being defensively good, not anymore, and then he decided, oh, you know what, I'm going to be playing Lindelof as a right back. He did. And it was costly, to be fair. It was costly. The danger immediately came from his side. The goal came from his side. Obviously, 7 minutes in, Joao Felix with the header, scoring with a header between Maguire and Varane. That is as ridiculous of a sentence as you could say in the world of football. I mean, Maguire is just really awful at this point. Like, he's plain awful. Like, he was ball watching. Varane was ball watching. The cross, absolutely brilliant from Renan Lodi. I mean, Renan Lodi is a good fullback. Like, he's not exactly Roberto Carlos levels of good, but he's really good. But Lindelof made him look like Roberto Carlos did last night. Roberto Carlos, Renan Lodi, really had loads of times to run on the ball. Every time he had the ball, he was dangerous. He was absolutely magnificent. And again, against a player like Lindelof, not exactly a right back, he would really look really good. Aside from that, I think United were absolutely horrific in that first half. There was no real urgency. There was no penetration. Rashford and Sancho pretty much were missing from the game. Basically, United had 9 players on the pitch instead of 11. Cristiano Ronaldo obviously was isolated in the crowd of players in the midfield and in the defence. I mean, Atletico Madrid, for all of their defensive serenity that we associate with them, they had a pretty good attacking plan. In defense, of course, they were setting really, really well, like 5-2-3. Geoffrey Kondogbia and Ander Herrera and Hector Herrera were always close to the defense. They're not leaving exactly much of a gap for Bruno Fernandes and Pogba in particular to play into. Pushed them wide, pushed them outside of that comfort zone, forced Pogba and Fernandes to play really deep and not have any effect on play in the first half in particular. Didn't get loads of balls. Cristiano Ronaldo didn't get loads of opportunities to play free. He dropped to the middle as well. And again, as I always say, when these scenarios happen, it's easier for the team to defend because they don't have to run a lot. They let the players of the opposition play deep and they just defend their zones, and that's it. And that's what Atletico did. United were pretty much absent from the front foot in the first half, and they almost conceded the second late on, of course, with the Salico hitting the crossbar. It was a bad first half for United. It was a bad game for United. I dare to say this was a pretty offensively great game from Atletico Madrid. In the second half, they didn't wane. They didn't go back to their defense. They started really well. The first 15 minutes or so were really good for Atletico. And then United decided to change the game a little bit. They brought in Wan-Bissaka for Lindelof, expectedly. He didn't really contribute forward, but at least things were safer defensively. Question mark. Alex Telles was brought in for Luke Shaw. He moved in, with Matic for Pogba, which was a weird change, I thought. Elanga coming in for Sancho, expectedly as well. And Elanga was more effective on the first opportunity that Manchester United had throughout the game to really break Atletico's defence. The first moment Atleti's defence was stretched, Reinildo Movenda, the third centre-half, was pulled out of his position. Elanga ran in behind brilliantly, and it was a wonderful finish in the 80th minute. Overall, this was a good game from Atletico, not exactly bad. Manchester United had a lot of work to do, and they still have a lot more of work to do in Manchester, of course. I think, just like the Juventus game against Villareal, I thought the away side were the least deserving side of the draw. Different scenarios, obviously, Atletico were leading here, but they played better for most of the game. They were offensive again. They were attacking, surprisingly almost. I mean, not surprising considering the players that they had, but it's the fact that Simeone is a pretty defensive-minded coach in his approaches, so that's where it strikes you the most. So, Atletico Madrid, a draw that could have been more. Manchester United, they good to survive the draw in Madrid. They will go to Manchester with, I would say, a bit of advantage. I don't know about that, but in my opinion, this is going to be pretty open, like the Juventus Villareal one. The game in Manchester is going to be just wonderful to watch overall. It's going to be very, very interesting and enticing to see what's Ronaldo going to do in that reverse leg in Madrid. Of course, it's 1-1. Everything is open. My prediction is still the same. I still think Atletico will just about edge, I think, Manchester United in terms of this tie. The second game on Wednesday was Benfica drawing 2-2 against Ajax, of course. This was a surprising result for me. Of course, I wasn't watching the game. I was watching Man United versus Atletico Madrid versus Man United. This game was, pretty surprising for me in terms of the result, the statistics. I watched the extended version of the highlights of this game to try and understand and grasp an idea about what happened. I think, the two goals were pretty much mistakes from Ajax's own making, although Benfica were not that bad. They really were good for their home game, for their home advantage. 2-2 result pretty understandable. Obviously, if it was away goals, I would say advantage Ajax, but with no away goals, Benfica would go to Amsterdam in 3 weeks' time, and they will be pretty pumped up and will have, I think, the chances to the fullest, considering that game. They will try and play it all the way until the end. Ajax, I think, were not as good as you'd expect them to be, not just because they conceded the 2 goals, but also because it felt at periods that Benfica were better. Obviously, I mean, the advantage of home advantage in the second leg will be good for them. I'm not worried exactly about them, but just I think a bump in the road, let's say, for Ajax Amsterdam. I doubt really that Ajax Amsterdam will let the lead go in the second leg of that game. I still believe strongly that Ajax are really good to go for the quarterfinals in this one, but obviously good game from Benfica, and really an plausible, I think, performance that deserves all the credits for putting on such a stern performance and getting the 2-2 draw against Ajax Amsterdam, a side that is really, really good this season. There was not just Champions League football on Wednesday. There was some Premier League football as well. It was 3 games played, of course, 3 games rescheduled. In the Premier League, Burnley defeated Spurs in a rescheduled game from round 13. Ben Mee scored the only goal for Tottenham, and this is the epitome, I think, of how Tottenham are performing this season. Once up and once down. They win City, they defeat City, they put the title race on fire in the Premier League, and the next day, they lose against Burnley 1-0 away from home. Obviously, this is a game that you don't need to watch to understand what happened. Burnley were Burnley, they defended, they played tight, they played, strong, lobbed long balls, and the goal was on a set piece, so no surprises really from Burnley. Aside that, maybe we'll not do a lot of things this season, probably going to be relegated by the end of it, but also aside that you don't guarantee, you don't know what is going to happen with them when you play them, particularly at their home. Obviously, a loss that is going to put a dent in the armour, a big dent in the armour, I would say, for Spurs as far as their top 4 hopes are concerned. Obviously, the hope was that they win their 3 games in hand and they are good to go. This is one of them lost, and they still have 2, and we don't know exactly how things are going to pay out in the future. Crystal Palace added more misery to Watford at the bottom of the table, defeating them 4-1. It was a great showing from Wilfried Zaha, who scored twice in this game. Crystal Palace were pretty comfortable winners in this one. Watford had no chance really against them. Conor Gallagher was a really good presence in that game. Moussa Sissoko equalised for Watford, although that didn't work in the end for them. Crystal Palace just completely smashed them, and Watford under Roy Hodgson apparently are going to be relegated this season. Their situation is pretty miserable at 19th with 18 points, 1 point ahead of bottom of the table Norwich City. For Burnley, by the way, they still have 3 games in hand themselves, so they're I think in a pretty safe situation if they win some of them to not be relegated. But obviously the most important game in this lot is Liverpool hosting Leeds United. All eyes in the Premier League was on this game, waiting for Liverpool to beat Leeds and go 3 points behind Manchester City and reduce the gap of 3 points behind Manchester City. And again, expectedly they beat them, but obviously the result was the one that surprised people. 6-0 it was at Anfield. Salah on the double, Mane on the double, and the centre-back, on the double, Matip scoring in the second, and Van Dijk rounding up the 6th goal and and the victory for Liverpool. This was a one-sided game, there's no two ways about it. Liverpool completely annihilated Leeds. Leeds were absolutely disorganised. Everything bad you can say about a defence, you can see it against Leeds. They're one of the worst defences in the Premier League. They're the second defence in the Premier League, the second worst defence in the Premier League. But actually now they become the first. They become the weakest defence in the Premier League after this loss. 56 goals now conceded. They are 15th on the table with 23 points. And we can really say that Leeds are in a danger now, I think, of getting relegated off the Premier League. After these results, these performances, and these defensive showings, I think it's easy to predict that Leeds are in a pretty dangerous position. Obviously, for Liverpool, big winners from the weekend when City lost, and big winners now, 3 points behind Man City, and the Premier League race is indeed on, and we're going to see a pretty great ending to the season. It's going to be terrific to watch the next 12 games, of course, unfold. They have a title that could win in the Carabao Cup on Sunday, and it will be really, really amazing to see how things will pan out in the Premier League. Let's quickly take a look at the Europa League second leg fixtures, of course, playing on Thursday. It will be Of course, Olympiacos hosting Atalanta, Lazio hosting Porto in Italy, Leipzig traveling to face Sociedad in Spain, Dinamo Zagreb hosting Sevilla, Napoli hosting Barcelona in the big tie from this round of 16, Dortmund hosting or going to Scotland to face Rangers, Sporting Braga hosting Sheriff Tiraspol, and Real Betis hosting Zenit St. Petersburg. And this is going to be a tough one to predict, particularly the Barcelona-Napoli one. Obviously, Dinamo Zagreb are going to be hosting Sevilla. I think Sevilla in the first leg, had a good result, defeating them giving them 3-1. Not exactly safe when you're travelling away, but I think it's pretty good for Sevilla to go through for that second round. For Olympiacos against Atalanta, Atalanta are not in a good form exactly, so Olympiacos may take advantage of that and turn things around. Porto, I doubt Lazio are going to turn things around in Italy. I think Porto will qualify in that one. Leipzig Sociedad is a pretty open affair. I think Sociedad can be good to go, winning their game, of course, in Spain. For Barcelona and Napoli, this is the one where I'm going to just focus a little bit. Barcelona are in a good form in the league. They just defeated Valencia 4-1. Napoli dropped points against Cagliari on the weekend, on Monday to be precise, and missed the opportunity to go top of the table. How that's going to affect them? Obviously, surely they rested players in that game against Cagliari, knowing that they have a big game coming against Barcelona. I still think Napoli has the advantage, albeit Barcelona improved a lot, and certainly they're finding their rhythm with Ferran Torres coming in good, Aubameyang coming in good, a hat-trick against Valencia, Adama Traore performing really well, and the host of other players around them really improving and taking almost a morale boost in this one. I think it will be pretty tight and open. I still think Napoli will just edge this one, but definitely Barcelona probably will put a good showing to really make the fans happy about the prospects of the team for next season. I doubt Dortmund will beat Rangers in that game. I think maybe they'll beat them with a score that doesn't qualify them. Obviously no away goals or anything, but I don't think that this 4-2 loss is going to be avenged in Scotland, particularly with no Haaland still on their ranks. So definitely this will be a tough game to call for Dortmund, but they need the result, albeit it's going to be almost mission impossible against Rangers in Scotland. Sheriff Tiraspol, I think they will make the surprise and go through against Braga, and for the game between Real Betis and Zenit, Real Betis, I think they will qualify. They got a good result away from home 3-2, and they will finish the job at the Benito Villamarín. That's it for the episode. I was with HID of the PSP. Like, share, comment on the YouTube version, subscribe to the YouTube channel, enable notifications to receive all the updates from these episodes of the podcast. Obviously, the African podcast will drop later on today, hopefully, to talk about the third round of the group stage of the CAF Champions League. Follow us on social media, listen on Spotify, Google Podcasts, or any other platform. And until the next episode, I was with HID of the PSP, and goodbye. Take care.
Behind closed doors, I'm a fool for your love.